This lecture covers group work in school and community settings and working with families. The image on this slide is of 5 figures seated in a semicircle, looking as though they are participating in a group discussion. We'll begin by watching a brief video that provides an example of group work with children.
Apologizing and forgiveness.
Because I don't know if we agree. That's why I'm curious. So if someone says something hurtful to you, right? And we all feel pretty bad about some of the things that people have done to us, right, Gage? Mm-hmm. And what if we forgive them? Like, they don't even know we've forgiven them. Well, do you think that'll make us feel better if we actually say, even though they said this about me, I'm not going to carry that around. I'm not going to let that bother me. Will that make you feel better? Anybody?
If they say sorry, then you can forgive them.
So if they apologize, you're feeling like that you can forgive them. But if they don't, what if you never see that person again? Can you still forgive them? Alex and Ileana said yes. What do you think, Roman?
Well, it depends if it was really bad or if it was like not that. If it was like really bad or not like bad, not like bad but hurtful.
So it'd be hard for you because I hear Tarjay saying it'd be difficult. Sherry, you're admitting it'd be difficult.
But I hadn't thought about that. I think it would be different if I didn't think they meant to hurt. You know, like when someone says zip face to you, they're trying to hurt you.
Well, what if they even say that?
Excuse me?
Well, why would they say that?
Because they're cruel.
They're being mean.
Or maybe because somebody else did it to them.
Tease them, right.
So instead of knowing how much it hurts so you wouldn't do it to someone else, they pass it on?
Yes. But you were going to say...
So if someone accidentally said something they didn't really mean to hurt me, maybe I could forgive them.
Right.
But not if they sort of really wanted to do that.
Well, what do you think, Alex and Leon? Because I believe something slightly different. I'm just curious if you all were thinking that too. You were saying even if they don't know they hurt you or they did it on purpose, can you still forgive them? Tell us why you think so.
Well, you could forgive them because, well, they didn't mean to do it, so if they really did mean to do it, then you wouldn't forgive them.
So even if they did it on purpose, it still would hurt you, and you couldn't say, forget them, I don't want to let it go, you can still hold on to it. Is that the same for you, Alex, or what were you thinking?
It's the same.
I guess I'll share what I was thinking. It's a little bit different. That when people hurt us, whether they do it on purpose or accidentally, once they hurt you, they've already did their part, right? Now it's up to me. Am I going to let it hurt me? Am I going to carry that? Or am I going to forgive them and just kind of forget about it? I'm not saying it's easy, but I don't like to carry those things around. But that's just the way I look at it. So what else can we do? So one is if someone... Sorry, Sherry.
No, go ahead.
One is if someone apologizes to you, will that eliminate one of the states?
Maybe.
Yes?
Yeah, each one of us is going to
So
be
let's pull one out for that one. You agree with that?
If
you agree with that. What else? So apology may help to eliminate some of the pain. What else? We had 2. Forgiveness for me will help to eliminate. Like, I choose to forgive that person even if they don't know about it.
You know, I just had a thought that I didn't realize before. I think it wouldn't hurt me so much if I could say to the person, you know, Rita, it really hurt me when you called me zip face. And I don't know if you meant it or not, but I want you to know it hurt. Then I could take them out.
So if you can, like, tell that person or communicate to them your feelings.
Instead of just feeling bad and putting my head down and going away. If I could stand up and say...
Would that be helpful if you can communicate to the person how you feel?
Yeah.
And it might be for some and not for others.
Oh, for less.
What do you think, Darjay? What is one way you can get rid of one of those?
I don't know.
Anybody?
You have a way?
Maybe if it's like not that bad, you can like forget about it. not like think about it anymore.
So just forget about
Yeah.
it. Will that work, Alex? You said yes, maybe? Not for you, Darcy? Any other ideas, Gage, what we can do?
I don't know.
You kind of had an idea before, and I think it might be a good one. Remember?
Give them an iMessage.
Wow.
That I don't like that or something.
Yeah.
You all familiar with those, the iMessages?
Yeah.
Not saying you're a jerk, but I don't like being talked to like that.
It's a great idea.
Alex has an idea.
You can talk to someone about it.
Wow. Talk to someone else, like maybe a friend, and say this was hurtful to you.
Yeah.
Or another adult.
Or a counselor.
Or a counselor.
Or should I say?
Or your parents, maybe.
Parents, brothers, sisters, siblings.
What else?
You know, sometimes I've had someone do something so nice that it makes me forget something bad. Like I was telling Sam that I was at a school in Phoenix one day recently, and when I left, a kid in the class just came up and gave me a big hug. That like took some of the hurtful things out because it was so nice.
I would agree.
I got all mine out.
You did good. You have another idea? Well, so does Roman. So
Some people say this might not help, but some people say like forgive and forget.
So forgive and forget may help. I agree with that one.
Oleg had one.
You can, if the person apologizes and wants to be a friend, so it can help out, so you can like talk about it, get it out of the system.
That's a great idea. So if you don't just stop.
What do you notice about this session? What strategies are the facilitators using to work with children that might be a bit different than they would use were this a group for adults? One strategy they use is pulling toothpicks out of styrofoam balls and throwing them into the center when they agree with a coping strategy that is discussed in the session. How do you think this might help individuals at this point in their cognitive and emotional development? This slide includes an image of a legal book and a gavel representing legal considerations for groups in school settings. There are certain considerations that need to be made for groups in school settings. It is important that you familiarize yourself with state law as well as agency policies with regard to issues such as mandated reporting. That is, the reporting of abuse or neglect, which is particularly relevant in school settings. Confidentiality laws are also relevant in all group settings and should be heeded closely when working with children. This slide provides a URL for a page related to Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors Code of Ethics. I would suggest familiarizing yourself with this code. In school settings, smaller groups are usually more effective. Duration of groups, especially with younger children, should be shorter. Keep in mind that the attention span of younger children is going to be much shorter than for adolescents. Group size and duration will also depend on the type of issues you are dealing with in the group. The Corey text provides the example that a group of quote-unquote acting out adolescents may need to be as small as a group of preschoolers. You may recall from your counseling techniques course that a phenomenon that we as counselors need to be aware of is countertransference. Countertransference occurs when a counselor transfers emotions to the client and is often a reaction to transference, a phenomenon in which the person in treatment redirects feelings for others onto the counselor. An example with children may be that a young child is redirected by the counselor in a gentle but firm manner. This child, being from a home where harsh and unfair discipline is often used, may act out against the counselor by yelling or becoming aggressive. The counselor may feel provoked by this and respond inappropriately by yelling back, or even worse, by physically reacting. Working with children, especially those with behavioral issues, can be very challenging, and counselors need to be cognizant of their own tolerance for these types of interactions and situations. Considerations for setting with children include ensuring privacy, but also taking into account a child's developmental level. A setting demanding that participants remain seated at all times and keep very quiet would likely not be appropriate for conducting groups with children. Counselors should be intentional in their use of developmentally appropriate language and communication skills when working with children and adolescents. It is also necessary that counselors working with children prepare adequately, yet be flexible enough to respond to spontaneous situations. Processing interactions that are occurring in the here and now can be very effective with children and adolescents who are highly influenced by their peers. Including parents and teachers in progress updates and acquiring parental permission for participation in groups is important in group work with children and adolescents. We will now review considerations for conducting groups in community settings. This slide contains an image of a row of houses meant to represent the community. The Corey text provides some excellent examples of groups in community settings targeted at women, men, individuals with HIV or AIDS, individuals experiencing grief, and older adults. The text illustrates these target groups through examples of group manuals. Here we will discuss some advantages and considerations for groups in community settings. This slide shows a figure balancing question marks representing things to consider when conducting groups in community settings. Advantages to conducting groups in community settings are that they are more cost-effective because more people can be served at once. This means that we may be able to meet needs that would otherwise go unmet due to funding limitations. Our class service learning project, providing the narrative enhancement cognitive therapy groups at the Opportunity Center for the Homeless, is an example of this. The American Group Psychotherapy Association website is a great resource to consult with regard to group work. This slide contains the AGPA website URL, www.agpa.org/HOME, and the AGPA logo, which include the name, acronym, and an image using circles and semicircles arranged to represent an abstraction of a group of 3 individuals. We will now watch a video featuring Sue Phillips, co-chair of community outreach for AGPA. She talks about groups in the community provided by AGPA following mass tragedies. She talks about how AGPA trains community members such as chaplains, military service personnel, and other community members to facilitate groups in their own communities, thereby drastically extending the reach of AGPA. This is a great example of the power of group work in community settings.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Phillips. I'm co-chair of Community Outreach for the American Group Psychotherapy Association. One of the things that both research and experience has shown us is that people heal in community. In the early stages of any kind of disaster or trauma, there's nothing as valuable to people as their familiar networks of support. Unfortunately, in the acute aftermath of a disaster, people are even having a hard time finding each other. So one of the roles that we have played is literally as a supportive function to provide what we call psychological first aid, which is to be a compassionate presence and to facilitate the grouping of people and to help them find those networks of support. AGPA had a very big part in the 9/11 response here in New York. In that situation, we had many different populations. We had uniformed service populations, of course, the fire department, the police department. We had school populations around Ground Zero. We had spiritual caregivers whose congregations had turned into trauma groups. In the aftermath of trauma, people go to their places of worship. One of our goals was to pass it forward. We knew we couldn't reach everyone, but if we could reach as many of the important people in the different communities, we knew then that we would extend our reach. We've done care of the caregiver programs for chaplains, military psychiatrists, military psychologists, as well as civilians who are providing service to military servicemen, their families, military servicemen and women, their families, and their children. We've translated much of the 9/11 work that we've done with uniformed services to the needs of military couples. In the aftermath of the Chinese earthquake, we were able to provide both training in trauma groups and in care of the caregiver in China through Skype. It was 7 o'clock in the morning in New York, 7 p.m. in China, and we spent hours working with folks who would be intervening in the aftermath of that disaster. when needs arrive, whether it's a result of death, disaster, trauma, or general needs, we find that one of the things that's necessary is that we go to them. And so part of our goal is to make ourselves available to meet the needs of various populations, both nationally and internationally. And because we know that people heal in group, we're both able to understand that in a group setting, what's happened can be normalized, what's happened can be validated. In a group, someone who does not yet have a voice to put words to the unspeakable finds the support in the group to find a way back to recovery.
We will now talk about group work with families, also referred to as family therapy. This slide shows a picture of a set of figures with one figure holding a child and another child standing in the foreground of a couple meant to represent a family unit. So what is a family? According to Carter, founder of and leader of the Family Institute of Westchester, an internationally recognized postgraduate family therapy training program for mental health professionals, and McGoldrick, co-founder and director of the Multicultural Family Institute in Highland Park, New Jersey, and adjunct faculty member at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, families are made up of individuals with a shared history and future. They encompass 3 to 5 generations who share their entire emotional system. They are held together by legal or historical ties. The U.S. Census Bureau defines families as a group of 2 or more persons related by birth, marriage, adoption, residing in the same household. This may include those who never marry, those who marry and never have children, those who marry and divorce, and various non-traditional family arrangements. Families can look different depending on the times, the culture, and the attitudes of the time. So how are families related to groups and to rehabilitation counseling? Some groups involve members of the same family. For example, there may be a case where a counselor would conduct a group of newly diagnosed individuals, let's say newly diagnosed with cancer, and their spouses or children. The aim of the group may be to process feelings of grief, provide support, and give important information regarding treatment and living with cancer. Families exert influence on the individuals we work with in groups, and oftentimes group members will assume similar roles in groups as they do in their family of origin. This makes it very important for us to understand families. Understanding families and how they operate provides insight into the person. According to work by Michael Leahy, professor of rehabilitation counseling at Michigan State University, who has conducted roles and function studies in the field of rehabilitation counseling, specialized knowledge of family counseling has become part of the qualified rehabilitation counselors need to know for applying in their setting. In other words, qualified rehabilitation counselors may need to apply and understand families in our practice. There are important differences we need to recognize between individual and family therapy. For example, family interactions are much more unpredictable than in individual therapy, where the counselor is working with a therapist-client dyad. Adding more individuals to a session multiplies the individual dynamics and increases the clinical data dramatically. The focus of the counseling approach in family therapy is on systems dynamics rather than individual dynamics, on circular causality rather than linear causality as in individual therapy, and on process rather than content. Systems dynamics involves a shift in perspective from individual dynamics. The question is not what is quote-unquote wrong with individuals, but what is the function, purpose, or meaning of the individual's behavior within the family dynamics. Some excellent reading on family therapy can be found in the book Family Therapy Basics by Mark Worden. Working with families also involves changing our views of causality from a linear view where event A causes event B, represented on this slide by a set of dominoes being pushed over by a figure, to circular causality, which places individual behavior in a network of feedback loops, represented by spheres with arrows seemingly rolling forward. In circular causality, we recognize that everyone's behavior impacts everyone else's. Focusing on circular causality draws the therapist's attention away from seeing individuals causing behavior in others to a broader view of the family's self-perpetuating cycles of interactions. Family cycles can be functional or adaptive, or dysfunctional, maladaptive. Circular causality eliminates the bad guy assumption. Again, great explanations of this shift in perspective from linear to circular causality are given in the Warden book. In family work, we must also shift our focus from content to process. A focus on content means focusing on the concrete issues being discussed, focusing on the what is said in the session. A focus on process changes the emphasis to how the issue is portrayed in family interactions. What dynamics are involved? How are things said and to whom? What roles do people take on or play in the family? And are these functional or dysfunctional? This slide shows a picture of a giant figure using a magnifying glass to examine a group of smaller figures below. This represents the necessary skill in working with families of developing the capacity to observe. Counselors working with families need to identify family patterns by observing verbal and nonverbal communications within the family. Examples of things the counselor would need to attend to include: where do people sit in relation to one another? Who speaks for the family as well as for other family members? And which relationships are the most conflicted? We will now watch a video describing Bowenian family therapy.
Hello and welcome to the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda, and today's short video is on Bowenian therapy. I've had a long history with Bowen and his famous theory. On my first day as a professor in 1997, I was extremely nervous as I gave my very first lecture, and this first lecture was on Bowenian theory. Since then, Bowenian theory has continued to be a part of my teaching of students, my supervision of therapists, my work with clients, and in my personal life. In the mid-20th century, Murray Bowen was among the pioneers of family therapy, and nearly every family therapist has continued to study his theory in graduate school today. Here are the main concepts as I see them. Number 1, anxiety. He used the word anxiety as a general term for emotional tension or stress. Bowen believed that anxiety moves through the system from one person to the next. He believed it impairs our ability to think and reason. He also believed that many presenting problems are a result of anxiety or stress. Number 2, togetherness versus separateness. Bowen believed that all life possesses these two opposing forces. The togetherness force compels us to be with others, to seek approval, and to attach to others. And the separateness force compels us to be independent, to have our own beliefs, and to not be smothered by others. Bowen asserted that we strive for balance between these two forces, and if they are balanced well, we can be close to our loved ones without losing our sense of individuality. Number 3, the feeling guidance system versus the intellectual guidance system. Bowen believed that we have two inner guidance systems, the feeling or emotional guidance system and the intellectual or reasoning guidance system. The feeling guidance system involves emotion, automatic reactions, knee-jerk reactions, instincts, urges, etc. And the intellectual guidance system involves thinking, judgment, logic, rational thought, reasoning, etc. Bowen asserted in order to make functional decisions, we need access to both guidance systems, and we need to be able to differentiate between them. Number 4, differentiation. This is his most famous concept. If someone is differentiated, they can do two things well. They can differentiate between their emotional guidance system and their reasoning guidance system. This allows them to choose to be guided by either system, and they can differentiate themselves from other people. They don't get wrapped up in other people's emotions, and they can be intimate with others while also remaining separate and individuated. In general, people at higher levels of differentiation have less emotional reactivity, have the ability to calm their emotions, can make more thoughtful and intentional decisions, don't give in to pressure from others, are less vulnerable to stress, are independent, are less prone to triangulation, have the ability to extricate themselves from emotional entanglements, have fewer physical problems, emotional problems, and social problems, can have closeness with others without getting lost in the relationship, and have more fulfilling relationships in general. People at lower levels of differentiation are more emotionally reactive, have difficulty engaging in thoughtful behavior, have difficulty saying no to people, are more critical and judgmental, are overly concerned about approval, are more dependent on others, are more prone to triangulation, enmeshment, disengagement, conflict, and cutoff, have difficulty making decisions, have greater physical problems, emotional problems, and social problems, have difficulty communicating directly, and repeat problematic relationships rather than learning from their mistakes. Bowen rated people on a differentiation scale from 1 to 100, with 100 being completely differentiated and 1 being completely fused. In a family, the person with the lowest number is often the symptom bearer of the family fusion. Bowen believed that most people stay at the differentiation level they had when they left home, which is very rarely above 60. Also, we tend to choose spouses and friends with similar differentiation levels. So he believed that your differentiation level is relatively fixed for life. However, your differentiation level will diverge from your baseline depending on your current stress level and the coping skills that you employ. Bowen believed that you can slowly raise your baseline differentiation level by managing your emotional reactivity and by detriangulating yourself from your family of origin, particularly your parents. Number 5, triangulation. Aside from differentiation, this is his other famous concept. Bowen believed that when two people experience relational tension, they tend to pull in a third party to dissipate that tension. Here are some examples of triangles. A conflictual married couple focuses on a child to avoid their marital conflict. Two people meet for the first time, and to alleviate their nervousness, they talk about the weather or about sports. A wife complains to her therapist about her husband. During a marital conflict, a child misbehaves to distract the parents from their fighting. A married couple has lost faith in their ability to communicate, so they watch a lot of TV. In this example, the TV is a triangulated third party. As an example from Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker complains to Emperor Palpatine about the Jedi Council. Another example from Star Wars, when Princess Leia argues with Han Solo, she kisses Luke Skywalker. These are all examples of triangles. Bowen believed that particular triangles become fixed over time in families and act predictably to alleviate stress and anxiety. I like to delineate between what I might call dysfunctional triangles and functional triangles. A dysfunctional triangle is one that perpetuates the problem, and a functional triangle helps resolve the problem. Bowen believed that the triangle between you and your parents is the most important triangle in your life, and that this triangle determines the interactional patterns for your future relationships. You can detriangulate from a dysfunctional triangle by being as differentiated as possible when engaged with the triangle, by being as calm and cool as possible, by not taking sides, by not becoming emotionally reactive. Or you can make it a functional triangle by helping the dyad to resolve their problem. So what do Bowenian therapists do? In a nutshell, Bowenian therapists try to help their clients act in a more differentiated manner, which is thought to result in better relationships, reduced symptoms, and greater well-being. To this end, they help people to be thoughtful in the face of stress rather than reacting without thinking. They might teach emotional awareness skills and emotional management skills. They might coach the client to differentiate from their family of origin. Bowenian therapists like to make genograms with their clients. They also assess the family pattern, the family history, the family structure, each person's differentiation level, the way the family handles anxiety and stress, the way anxiety moves through the family, and the way they triangulate. Bowenian therapists like to help people individuate, to become more independent, and to be more self-soothing. Bowenian therapists teach their clients about how family systems work, so clients have a better understanding of how their own family operates. Bowenian therapists try to help people communicate their needs in a more differentiated manner. They try to help people to shift from trying to change others to trying to change themselves. They encourage clients to assume responsibility for their own life. Bowenian sessions tend to be controlled and cerebral rather than emotional and passionate. Bowenian therapists tend to work with just the parents or even just the most differentiated parent, even if the presenting problem involves the child. Bowenian therapists are diligent about not getting pulled into dysfunctional triangles with the clients. Also, Bowen believed that in order for a therapist to be effective, they had to differentiate from their family of origin, in the same way he differentiated from his own family of origin, which is described in his famous paper published in 1972. In this paper, he describes how he differentiated from his family of origin by remaining calm and non-defensive with them, and he detriangulated from his parents, who often confided in him about the other parent. He also established emotional connectedness by having one-on-one contact with each family member. He gained insight in how the family system operated, and found that this process increases overall differentiation level, and he was able to be less reactive with everyone in his life. He also found that he was a better therapist as a result, so he encouraged his trainees to follow the same procedure and differentiate from their own families of origin. So what are the critiques of Bowenian theory? Feminists criticize the way Bowenian theory privileges masculine Northern European culture by promoting independence and devaluing emotion. Postmodernists criticize Bowenian theory since the theory does not recognize the way the therapist is a part of the system. Systemic purists criticize Bowenian theory since it posits that dysfunction and fusion travels in one direction, from parents to children, rather than acknowledging that dysfunctions are often circular in nature, with children participating in the family dynamic. Collaborative therapists criticize Bowenian therapy for imposing goals upon the client, such as detriangulation, rather than working collaboratively with the client. Other kinds of family therapists criticize Bowenian therapy for not including the entire family in treatment. Proponents of cultural competency might criticize Bowenian therapy for not sufficiently emphasizing cultural awareness and sensitivity. Trauma therapists might criticize Bowenian therapy for not incorporating our contemporary understanding of trauma recovery. Others criticize the theory for providing a reductive and simplistic explanation for too many presenting problems. In light of current neuroscience, some might argue that it is inaccurate to dichotomize thinking and feeling. Having said all that, all of my favorite approaches have at least some problems with them, and as long as these critiques are considered carefully by Bowenian therapists, I believe this form of therapy can be very helpful with many presenting problems, but probably not all. What do I like about this approach? I find the concepts of differentiation and triangulation to be extremely useful. I like the way the theory conceptualizes pathology as a relational issue. I like the way it provides a way of tracking emotions as they move through families. I think the idea of establishing a differentiated one-on-one relationship with each member of your family of origin is a very useful idea. The assessment of triangles is also very useful when treating families. I like how this approach gives permission to family therapists to work with individuals if they determine that it would be the most effective way to work with them. And finally, I like this theory because it provided the foundation for the much-loved Family of Origin course in my Marriage and Family Therapy program at Antioch University, Seattle. That's the end of this short video. If you want more information, go to psychologyinseattle.com where you can contact us and take our online continuing education courses. Thanks for joining me, and please take care.
Basic interactive concepts in Bowenian family therapy include triangulation and scapegoating. Triadic relationships are at the heart of family systems therapy. Boundaries, including enmeshed boundaries, family members speaking for one another, parents telling children what they should think and feel, guilt used as a means of control, indications that neither parent has psychologically separated from his or her own parents, and disengaged boundaries, lack of communication, and rigidity. Power, intimacy, and communication patterns are also important concepts in Bowenian family therapy. Important aspects of the therapeutic alliance in family therapy include maintenance, tracking, and mimesis. Maintenance means confirming and supporting family members' positions. For example, Mrs. Martin, you must find it very difficult being the mother in this blended family. Tracking means tracking or following a sequence of events through a series of clarifying questions. For example, Mrs. X, what do you say or do when X Jr. does this? X Jr., how do you respond? Mr. X, when do you get involved? Mimesis is when the therapist adopts the family style and tempo of communicating. We will now watch a video depicting structural family therapy, one style of family therapy.
My name's Don, and the reason that we're in therapy is I really love my kids, but I can't take it anymore. The fighting has just gotten insane, and my son Ben, I almost hit him last week, and that scares me. So I knew we needed some help.
Hi, my name is Angela. I am the mother of Ben and Heather. And since Dawn and I got divorced last year, apparently Ben has had some issues, and from what I've heard, the family life just has kind of fallen apart, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know why my ex-husband is having so many issues with the kids. Everything was fine before the divorce, but I'm concerned. It seems like there's some issues that need to be resolved, and I'm glad that they're all going to get help.
Hi, my name is Heather, and I'm the youngest child in our family. We're here in therapy. Things have been a little bit stressful lately. I feel like my relationship with my dad has been really good. It's always been good, but my relationship with my brother Ben has just been really crazy lately, and it's just put a lot on our family.
My name's Ben. I'm here at therapy because Donald, my dad, just said to go. I guess it's just another punishment. I don't know. It seems like everything I do is wrong, and my sister and I can do the same thing, and I'm the one who gets in trouble for it. So, I don't know. That's why I'm here.
Well, it's one thing to talk about the relationships in your family, but I think what might make this a little bit more clear is to have you guys reenact a scenario that typically has happened in your family, an argument that's happened per se, and this will kind of help me see the family dynamics at work. So, Ben, what's something that's happened lately, or an argument perhaps that you've had with a family member?
The other night, I got home from my buddy Paul's place. It wasn't late. It was like 2:30, 3 in the morning. Park in the driveway, leave a little room so someone in the garage can get out. If they can't, I always leave my keys right by the front door. Come in, go to bed. Wake up the next morning, like 6:30. Heather's there pounding on my door, yelling at me to move my car.
Okay.
I say, move it yourself. Keys are right there by the door. No. Okay. No. She makes me get up.
Okay, so why don't I stop this right here, and I actually want you to, Heather, Ben, to reenact that fight for me.
Okay.
Why don't I have you guys start from the point where you were pounding on his door, he woke up, and that's where the conversation started.
Okay.
Well, you said...
Move it yourself.
Okay, move it yourself. Go.
I said, no, I have to be at school. It's not my responsibility to move your piece of shit car.
I just got in bed. I mean, I just yell, move it yourself.
Whose fault is that you decided to go to bed
Ben, I'm
at 6
sorry
a.m.?
of you coming home so freaking late at night. Your sister has to get up to go to class in the morning.
I
It's
sleep
not
later,
appropriate.
I sleep later, I work later, I stay out later. I still
Yeah,
have a job.
all
I still
hours
get
of the
things
night,
done.
all over town. We don't know where you are.
So, Don, what if I were to tell you that I'm going to give you permission to not get involved in these arguments? I'm going to give you permission to be a parent. Remember we did our genogram, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had the parents at one level of the hierarchy, and we had the kids at the lower level of the hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you out of the role of having to get in the middle of their argument, and I'm going to have you stand back and be a parent. I'm going to give you permission. I'm going to give you freedom not to have to participate in this. And we'll see how that feels. It might feel a little weird at first, so are you willing to try it?
I'll try.
Okay. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to reenact the same scenario, but in a different way. So first, Dawn, I'd like you to trade places with your son.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to have you guys have a dialogue here, back and forth, kind of like we just did. And you identify something that you need from the other person, okay? And Dad, we get to sit back and watch this, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, ready? Action.
I feel like, I'm just worried about you, and I just, we miss you. Me and Dad, we're always...
Hold on. Talk from you.
Okay.
Talk from you.
I miss you, and I just don't really feel like you've been very available in our family. And this argument that we just had, it's just one little example of the bigger picture of you not being available and not really respecting me.
I guess I don't like getting woken up when I just fell asleep, but that's a small part of it too. I guess, more importantly, I need you to back me up sometimes, sis. Like, like when Dad's getting on my case and you walk by, like you just immediately jump in on his side, and you never back me up, and I could use that.
Okay. Well done. All right. I'm going to ask you guys, how did that feel? And how is that different from the first situation? Ben, let's check in with you.
It was weird just getting to talk to her without yelling.
Incredible how that works. Heather, what was your take on the situation?
It was nice. I felt really, like he listened to what I said and was really present, and felt like a real conversation.
Okay. Now, Dawn, appreciate your patience in watching this. Was that difficult for you to watch without trying to?
Yeah, I definitely felt like Heather wasn't getting a chance to say all the things that she needed to.
Okay. Why don't I have you comment on the interaction between the two of them? What did that feel like to you?
Better than it's been in a long time.
We will now discuss an example illustrating the importance of appreciating the complexity of family systems. This slide contains an image of many interlocking different colored triangles, representing the Bowenian concept of triangulation. Here you're going to see a series of triangles appear. The first triangle is a triad of mom, dad, and child 1. Adding one more child 2, is actually adding 3 more triangles to the family system, as child 2 will form triads with mom and dad, with mom and child 1, and with dad and child 1. This illustrates the complexity of the family system. This slide contains a picture of Dr. Murray Bowen, founder of the Bowenian Family Therapy, delivering a lecture pointing to a family tree or a genogram on a chalkboard. It includes the Bowen Center website URL, www.thebowencenter.org. Bowen is spelled B-O-W-E-N. I would encourage you to explore the site to learn more about Bowenian therapy. The slide also includes a quote from Dr. Bowen. Every human starts life fully dependent on others, specifically on the family of origin. Growing up involves progressive development of individual characteristics and aspects of increasing independence. The development of self occurs in the case of each person, in and through networks of relationships with other members of the family system. This is the end of this lecture on groups in school and community settings and a brief introduction to working with families. Please note that the videos shown as part of this lecture are not my own. They were located on YouTube and embedded in my presentation. Thank you.